By late 1943, bombing raids were inflicting massive damage on Germany, and the Allied invasion of Europe was already being planned. But inside Colditz, the Germans held the upper hand. They'd learned how to counter all the traditional means of escape and had transformed the castle into an effective prison. To escape from Colditz now would take a leap of imagination.
It was winter, snow was falling. December 1943 we're now talking about. This window looked out over Colditz town. The wind was blowing on the face of this window. But what appealed to me was the fact the snowflakes weren't coming down, they were actually just drifting up and over the top. So we could watch the force of the wind at work on them. And what a smooth flow it was for you just to sort of, like going swimming, launch yourself into this rising air and float gently down to the river. That was the thought. That was Eureka. All the other methods of escape had been attempted by somebody. The French had dug an enormous tunnel under the chapel. People had gone like Jack through the wire. Lots of people. A few people had gone through the gate. Aaron and Eve had gone out of the theatre. All these places had been sorted out and used. This seemed much simpler to me, just stand on the roof and jump off.
Bill's idea was to build a glider and launch it from the top of the castle. The roof stood 300 feet above the ground. If a runway of tables could be placed along the 40-foot ridge, then by using ropes, pulleys, and a counterweight, they could catapult themselves over the ramparts and glide silently over the sleeping inhabitants of Colditz town. Across the river, they could see the perfect landing place. A desperate plan, but there hadn't been a home run in over a year, so the idea was approved by Dick Howe, head of the escape committee. Bill Goldfinch was asked to provide a drawing. Another RAF man was brought in, Bill's friend, Jack Best.
We had been mates ever since we'd been prisoners, I think, really. So we more or less talked with one voice. We were called the Two Old Crows, but...
and all the wicked uncles.
All the wicked uncles.
Neither of them had any idea how to build a glider, but they found a textbook in the prison library.
It was a matter of applying what knowledge one had to say, well, how big should the wing be? How much is it going to weigh? How strong has it got to be? We worked all these things out on paper.
With this information, Bill went to the drawing board and produced the first plan.
Before you make anything, you've got to have some sort of picture in your mind, and then somebody's got to put that, what's in his mind, on paper. So this is the paper representation of what we hope to build.
He was in charge of the detail of the design, and I think I made most of the tools.
The wonderful thing was you knew, for instance, that a saw consisted of something with teeth, and that the teeth faced a certain way, because you'd use the saw.
Like this.
Like that. And I hadn't, you see. So we were a mutual pair, really.
We called them the wicked uncles, because they're always walking around together. And when you saw anyone walking around with another person, you'd say, ah, they're up to something. You never knew. You never knew.
What's his name, Goldfinch, was sawing away at a piece of a locker. And I said to him, what are you doing? And he said, building a glider. And I laughed and went away. And then I think I spoke to someone about it. He said he was building a glider, ha ha. And they said, well, he is, actually.
The design developed to carry 2 escapees. But if they continued making the parts in their quarters, it couldn't be kept a secret for long. The glider would need a permanent workspace.
I don't know, I suppose that top bit is the theatre.
You can remember
isn't
that?
it? Well, no, I can't. I think it's big as
Hugo
that.
Ironside and Pat Ferguson were brought in to work on the glider.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, let's see if we can get
That
that here.
dreaded old door.
They haven't been back to Colditz since the war.
I think we can get through.
Can we get in? That's the next question.
Oh, God, there it all is. Pretty much the same, except for that bloody
And
tree.
little has changed to the
That
prisoner's
was
courtyard.
with a stool ball and all that.
But they're keen to find the secret glider workshop, high up in one of the attics. The location was chosen because it was just above the launch roof.
Go on, you can lead.
I was very pleased to be working on the glider. Any number of people working together just to get one person out of a prison camp was worthwhile, especially in a place like Colditz, which by now the German authorities thought was quite impregnable.
Now that rings a
Now
slight
this
bell.
is familiar, isn't it?
Back then, the spiral staircase only gained them access to the lower attic. From here, they had to go up through the ceiling.
And the trapdoor was, I would say, about
About there?
there. The first person in picked up the stools,
Yeah.
lowered them down on a rope, and then we could be hauled up.
It was quite an athletic sort of thing to do, really. I had to be reasonably competent.
I wouldn't like to do it today.
I wouldn't either, Hugo. No, no way.
Today, the climb is a lot easier, and the wall, which they built back then to seal them into their hideaway, has been removed.
Yes.
You would arrive at about this point.
this-
the wall was here,
That's right. This was the extent of
propped
it.
up against this.
They were ready cut off when you were building the wall.
The wall was
presumably.
built in sections, roughly the size of a 6-foot door, and sort of put up like
Put together.
that.
Then we covered it with palliasse covers. It was a very coarse woven imitation string or something, goodness knows what it's made of. And then we got a lot of earth and spread it all over by hand. Well, I knew about that. We were building mud huts in Kenya.
Once they were hidden behind their false wall, production could begin in earnest. Their light came from fat lamps, a pajama cord wick and a can of lard. Homemade tools cut and shaped the wood, which was stuck together with glue bribed from the German guards.
I thought the workshop was absolutely brilliant. Making ribs for the wings or for the tailplanes, which involved shaping the wood, steaming it, bending it, and then pinning it and gluing it, was an ongoing situation. And so it became a matter of routine eventually.
We were in a great big castle, ancient castle, lots of wood, lots of stone, lots of metal about, and it lay all around you for the taking. And you were in a protected environment inside this castle courtyard, and you could help yourself to what you wanted, which is exactly what they did. So, well, I want that bit of wood, so we'll take it then.
The main gate was the only way into the prisoners' courtyard. Through here came specialist guards called ferrets to search the buildings for anything out of the ordinary. To keep the workshop secure, the POWs used an elaborate lookout system.
Dick wanted one of us to sit on a rafter and take a tile away and look down into the courtyard and look across to the Polish quarters. And if there's a red bottle there, because the Polish quarters are in line with the gate, it meant the goons are coming in.
The false wall was so convincing that the Germans didn't notice that the top attic was shorter by 8 feet.
We kept absolutely quiet. It's incredible. You sitting down on the floor with no chairs, After about a quarter of an hour, you start getting the jitters.
The lookout system required 12 men positioned around the courtyard. The Germans knew there was something up and decided on a covert operation. They introduced their own man into the camp. Roy Walter Purdy, a sub-lieutenant in the British Navy, entered Colditz in the beginning of March 1944. Lone arrivals were always greeted warily, and later, under interrogation by British security, he admitted he was a traitor, brought in to spy on them.
Dick Howe accosted me, who was then and had been chairman of the Escape Committee for some time, and he said, "What do you think about this fellow Purdy?" And I said, "Well, not very much, really." And he said, "Well, some of us think that he is a traitor, that he should be hanged." And I said, "Well, I think he probably should be." "Ah," he said, "so you're in favour of that, are you?" And I said, "Well, yes, I suppose I am, really." Awful, a bit awkward, really, though, isn't it? He said, "No, I don't think it's awkward at all." He said, "I've got some volunteers, and we're assembling up in one of the rooms up here, and we're going to stream up." And I came up, and there were these people, and this wretched chap, terrified, I suppose, Dick Howe addressed us, and he said, "Right," he said, "now we're all here because we agree that it is our very painful duty to carry out the hanging of the traitor Purdy. We know what he's done here. He's admitted to it, came here as a stool pigeon, so quite clearly our duty, isn't it, to do it. We were a bit silent on this, and he said, "Well, isn't it?" So we all said, "Well, yes, we supposed it was." And he said, "Right, well, then all we need now is a couple of volunteers actually to do the deed, you see." There was a very long silence, so you can imagine. To cut a long story short, it's a very British story, I think, this. None of us really were prepared in cold blood to kill one of our own compatriots, whatever he'd done. I mean, you know, it just didn't seem a thing that we could do. And so the long and short of it was that we rang the bell until the gates were open and he was pushed outside.
With Purdy out of the camp, work could get back to normal. He had revealed a tunnel and a cache of escape equipment, but at least the glider workshop was safe.
The tailplane would then sit at the correct incidence above the rear decking.
Yes.
As it turned out, the glider was never launched. Nobody knows whether it would have flown.
It was above the top launcher it can turn.
Yeah.
And you've then got your 4.5 bolt hole.
Bolts, right.
Yeah.
So Bill Goldfinch's original design for escaping from Colditz will be rebuilt here at Southdown Aero Services in Hampshire.
Lovely simple fixing.
Yeah, I agree.
If you've got a nice long bolt with the right length.
Also,
and can drill a long vertical hole, which we certainly couldn't.
That is an ordinary German table knife, snapped off and sharpened in there. The first one I made was out of a chair leg, which was square, and I dug that all out of the penknife. I think it probably covers
The Fripps are a family of light aircraft builders who specialize in gliders.
One thing I didn't explain on the saw.
The wings will be built by pilot John Lee, who hopes to fly the plane.
Frightening about the design and the way it was constructed. But this explains how you made all the narrow sections for the ribs, because this would pass down the
That's right.
timber.
This was a spring out of gramophone. That, of course, is a bar off the window. to have it, and the bolts, God knows where they came from.
But when you took the bar off the window, why didn't you climb out of the window?
I hadn't got a rope handy. Put your hand in.
I haven't seen that one since the day.
Haven't you?
No.
Oh, gosh, oh, I've
That's the
had
most
several
marvellous thing I've ever seen, yeah.
But this glider uses modern technology. Electric saws and planes do the work in seconds that took Jack, Bill and the others weeks.
We never had any sandpaper.
The replica is following Bill's plan to the inch. Within 9 days, the shape of the aircraft is emerging. It took the prisoners months to get to this stage. Compared to the original workshop, marked out on the floor in tape, they have a lot more space. At the rate they're going, it'll only be a matter of weeks before the second Colditz glider will be ready for